Ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy to have our guest actually, with us today. This is a lady that I've actually been trying to get a hold of for weeks. I'm delighted that I finally managed to track her down, and she has agreed to join us and share her wealth of experience and wisdom. I'm talking about Jane Beddall, who has an impressive list of credentials. She's a lawyer. She started out as a lawyer and then moved into the conflict mediation space. She's a certified conflict coach. She uses something called transformative mediation. I've got to read this so I don't get my tongue tied. Transformative mediation. I'm dying to ask exactly what that means. She's a teacher and a speaker, as well as being a coach. And she is a budding author, ladies and gentlemen. She tells me she's already on chapter 3. So watch this space to find out what happens next. So welcome, Jane, and thank you for agreeing to come on.
My pleasure, Ashim. As I said to you, you're very persuasive. So I'm happy to have a chance to speak with you today.
Excellent. I'm glad I succeeded in this, in persuading you. So I'd like to ask you, Jane, as I do with all of my experts, what your story is. Yeah, what brought you to where you are today, and give us some background on yourself, please.
Sure. Well, my story is a little unusual in that I don't have a clear path to why I'm doing what I'm doing. Why I am comfortable dealing with conflict is still a little bit of a mystery to me. I did not grow up in a family where people fought like cats and dogs, nor were they stormed around not speaking to each other. Now, there were some issues in the more extended family, and that was painful to watch. There was estrangement that went on for literally decades. And when I think about that as an adult, I can look back at that and say, wow, what a shame. It had an impact on the next generation. And it's so satisfying for me to help people figure out what to do about that kind of situation instead of, well, I don't know what to do, except I'm just going to sue my good for nothing brother or brother in law, or I'll just stew, or we'll shout at each other at Thanksgiving dinner. Uh, but it has been an interesting journey, and I've met such interesting people along the way. I was not an unhappy lawyer, but I am happier still doing what I'm doing now.
Wow, I mean that's really interesting because the one thing that struck me, one of the things that struck me, Jane, is what you said about estrangement in your extended family. Now, I'm sure you're not alone, right? I'm sure most, if not all of us, have experience of that. But there was something that it seems triggered you, or encouraged you, if you like, to take your feelings of disappointment, perhaps, into doing what you do. Is there something you
Absolutely.
can put your finger on?
I can't precisely, but I can do this much. I can date how far back my interest was a professional one. And that's to say, way back 40 years ago, I was studying law at the University of Pennsylvania. And at the same time, I was in a master's degree program where I was in the public policy analysis program. But I needed to sit down with my advisor, as one does, to create a concentration. So I really liked that course. I want to take that one next. This sounds really quite interesting. And honestly, Ashim, at that point, we came up with, well, we've heard the phrase conflict resolution a couple of times. And that's what I called my concentration. Today, I could go get a master's degree in that, but I was a bit ahead of the curve. The interest was there even then, and it continues on. And what I particularly enjoy is that there's always an opportunity to learn more. And I love being able to do that from people in the field and from people who are not in the field but have insights from their own perspectives that they can share.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. So it's something that yeah, it came together at university. It came together. I must say, I'm very impressed that you were doing your legal studies and your masters in parallel. I barely managed one, so so congratulations on that. But
So there was time to do both. It took longer.
okay. I know that a lot of our audience will be thinking, well, that's all very interesting, but what does it have to do with us? And if what I'd like to do is kind of share my thinking on this, and why I'm so happy to have you on, Jane. And that is that conflict is a disagreement really between one or more parties or two or more parties, right? So
Mhm.
in succession planning, and especially succession planning and family business, there is the opportunity for that kind of disagreement. And the whole thrust, if you like, of this program is to mitigate the negative impacts of the disagreements and the conflicts that arise. And so that's why, Jane, I wanted you to come along and share ideas
Sure.
on how families can do that to facilitate, if you like, successful transition to the next generation. So before we go any further, I think it might be important, it is important for the audience, if you were to tell us what you mean by the word conflict, because it means different things to different people.
It certainly does. And I recognize right up front that I am more comfortable with conflict and even the word than most people are. I know people, professional advisors, who, if I have a hard time even saying the word, just don't want to deal with it. Please don't tell me that things aren't working. I don't know what to do and I don't know where to turn. I'm not in that camp. I'm in the we can do this. And disagreements, perfect word, are going to happen in life. We're not all robots. We're going to see things differently. So I actually view conflict this way: good, bad, and ugly. Now I'm going to start with ugly and go back. Ugly to me is the sort of thing we see in the popular TV show Succession. It is fascinating to many people watching this family struggle, sometimes self destruct. That kind of thing is entertaining to a lot of people. It is also what can terrify family business members. They are so afraid of ending up like that, both how destructive it is and how public it can be, that they don't want to deal with negative or bad conflict at all. I am overwhelmed. I may not even realize that, but my instinct and my decision is I'm just not going to deal with that. I'm going to power on. I'm going to hope that it gets better on its own. I'm going to pretend it's not there. All of those are not likely to work very well. I also embrace the idea of good conflict. And to me, good conflict is when we do have disagreements. We clash, but we clash politely. We may even be loud. We clash respectfully. And that's where the creative thoughts come from, the collaboration, the innovation, the pieces that take this business to the next level. Now, I will share with you, although I already had a great interest in conflict, my own family was not in a family business, but my husband's family had, past tense, a family business. And there is disagreement over whether it was all the grandfather, all the uncle, or the two of them together who decided that they would stay in place and the world would march on without them. And that was the end. And the business was sold for a song. Good conflict is it's important. And if we pretend it's not there or try to squelch it, that causes more problems. And sometimes it's heated, and heated doesn't have to be nasty or rude. I can recall a situation, two men, they were not young. Honestly, they just yelled at each other. This was a mediation, so I was there to help them work things out. And I am thinking, this is not going well at all. And tried, as I was trying to do, to kind of check in and how's this working for you? And the two of them turned to me as if, what is wrong with you? This is how, they didn't say these words, but this is how we talk. And it came to me fairly quickly. They are yelling, they're not screaming. For all I know, both of these people, both men might have been hard of hearing, and they yelled. It was a very productive yelling.
Wonderful story. So what I'm hearing, Jane, is that the two sides, if you like, that you've just described. On the one hand, people shy away from the difficult conversations because of what they perceive the possible results could be, right? Um, you know, public, for example, extremely negative emotions and so on. And so they kind of close their eyes to it and hope it'll go away. And of course, as we both know, that never happens. And on the other side, we can see conflict as an opportunity from which we can craft solutions, ways forward by sharing and challenging ideas and coming to some kind of decisions, which we may not all be entirely happy with, but which may actually, which will be a lot better than keeping them buried.
Yes.
So, okay, I'm glad I understood that, because this is really exciting for you. So tell me, what's the difference then between being a conflict coach and a transformative mediator? Sorry.
So I will actually start with what a transformative mediator is. Lots of people are familiar with mediation, but don't understand it as well as they might. And I speak from a US perspective, but this generally is going to be true anywhere. Mediation and arbitration are frequently confused. Arbitration puts the decision in the hands of the arbitrator, and the folks agree, okay, either far in advance, signing a contract, or right now, you decide. And then they are bound by that decision. Extremely difficult to overturn that. Courts don't want that. Mediators never force a decision. They help people make a decision based on what is in their own best interests and help them with a conversation, a little testing of reality. Is this really going to work? And a little bit of what happens if you don't reach an agreement.
Right.
Three main types: evaluative. What's this case worth? Is it worth $1 million? Is it worth $500,000? Is it somewhere in the middle? That's one type. I often think of them on a spectrum. Next on the spectrum would be facilitative. And that is more, we need to reach an agreement on this challenge. Example I use sometimes is construction going on across the road from existing homes. And the beep, beep, beep of those trucks backing up every morning is really tough. A facilitated agreement might be, until 9 a.m., we're going to drive the long way around so those trucks don't back up. Then starting at 9 a.m., we get the beep, beep, beep. But it's not perfect, but it's better for both of them than where they were, because the anger of the neighbors was causing a real issue for the truck drivers. Transformative is the least well known by far. It is fascinating to me because it is truly about the relationships, transforming the relationships of the people who are in some kind of conflict. The two main pillars are empowerment and recognition. For example, if I am having a dispute with my 50-something sibling and we are arguing as we have been for a long time, if I feel that you are actually listening to what I have to say, I feel a little empowered. I feel a little stronger. I'm not feeling defeated and beaten down by you. That allows me to give you some recognition. I may still completely disagree with what you're saying. I may even feel, if I were in your shoes, I would never think that. But I am able to recognize that you do. And that allows you, when you feel empowered, to recognize, well, I think Jane's nuts, but that's where she is. It is a wonderful cycle and can help, instead of the down the drain, it can help build up and strengthen the relationships. But as I've said, it is not well known at all. I think it's extremely powerful, especially where people know each other and have genuine challenges. And family enterprises, perfect example.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, what you say makes so much sense to me, because again, giving yourself the opportunity to actually listen to the other and recognizing that these are genuinely held beliefs for good reason in the other's mind kind of opens the door for the other person to feel the same, and thereby sets up a platform on which a conversation can be founded. Is that right?
Yes. And let me say that
Hmm.
to answer your original question, how are these two things different? The
Mm,
certified conflict coach, and I learned a particular model called Synergy,
mhm,
Cinergy.
mhm.
And then at times, that model, that coaching can help people who are in the conflict, and then we're going to have a mediation. It can be done that way.
Right.
However, to me, one of the great, actually, I'm going to say the word joys, for me is it is not shocking or terribly unusual for one family member to contact me and say, boy, oh, I'm so glad, and we're going to work with you, and things are going to improve. And then at least one other essential person says, not a chance. I won't even talk to Jane. I won't even listen to how she might be able to help us. Because I can't really harm you with just a conversation. So there's not a lot of downside, but it could be part of a power play. Who knows what reasons there are. They feel, that individual feels, this is just fine. Yeah, I'm winning, you're losing. This is fine. What is interesting about the conflict coaching is, although it can be done in advance of a facilitated mediation with a mediator involved, it can also be done without any of that. Instead, the coach works with the client. And what I love is the client plays both roles, themselves and the other person,
Great.
right?
Mhm.
Typically, someone they know terribly well, maybe their entire lives. And they actually work on, how do I start this conversation in a way that doesn't derail instantly? And they will practice out loud. So, and then they'll hear themselves say, that's not going to work. And it's always their own words, because Jane's words are useless. I'm not
Right.
there. I don't know you folks. You need to be able to do this. Flip side of that, equally important, is we have danced this dance before. It doesn't go well. I have a pretty good guess what my sibling's going to say to me that's going to set me off. I'm going to be so angry. Oh, wait a minute. And literally practicing. Okay, here it comes. He's going to say, what do you know? You've never been, fill in the blank. You've never been a lawyer. You've never run the business the way I have. You've never, whatever it might be. And then and one imagines oneself to be on the receiving side and finding a way to, again, not be derailed, but allow, as you say, getting to a platform for a conversation. We're not all going to agree on everything, but if we can have a genuine, productive discussion, it's a very good step in the right direction.
Right. How amazing is that? So do you find then that the coaching often happens as a first step, which then leads on to mediation? So you're coaching with one person, and then that leads on for whatever reason into a mediation situation?
It's a mix. And what, as I said, is particularly satisfying to me is,
Mm,
it's quite sad when someone contacts me and is all excited, and then I can't get anybody else to move forward. Then there's this option of, you don't need to despair completely.
mm,
Let's, you and I can work together, and then you can work on, without my involvement,
mhm, mhm.
how you can have the conversation, which is different from, I'm not teaching people how to be nasty negotiators. That's just not my interest. There are other places to learn that, not with me. But
Right,
instead, how would you improve the relationship? Accept what's going on here, as we've got a lot of baggage, known each other for decades.
right.
How do we make this a little better and a little more productive?
Okay. Okay. So typically, I mean, over the years, clearly you're hugely experienced. What is the single most common factor, if there is one, which triggers a demand for your support, for your help?
So I'd love to say that people plan ahead and they think, gee, this will make everything better. We should do this before things get bad. Hardly ever, virtually never. Sometimes they are literally in litigation
Right.
within the
Okay.
family. Ideally not. That's not typical for me. More typical is some sort of decision needs to be made, and the family is frozen.
Hmm.
It's on its way to harming the family if it hasn't already. It's on its way to harming the business if it hasn't already. And someone realizes we need to do better than this. That would be the most typical. There is something, occasionally it's there has been a big change in the family. Someone has died. Um, someone has left the family, someone has entered the family, but more typically there is some very important decision
Hmm.
that needs to be made, and they are not doing well with it.
Right. So it sounds to me, Jane, as though families should actually have written in the same way as they have arbitration clauses written into their governance. They should have some kind of clause which refers to the use of someone like you in situations of conflict.
Some do. It is not as common, but
Mm,
some do.
mm,
And some will even set up a situation where it's stages of first we're going to agree that we will have a civil conversation among ourselves
mhm.
or two people. If that doesn't work, then we're going to involve an experienced neutral who can help us. What's good about that in part is if it's already built in, two things. One, it's just a recognition that challenges can happen. And that is something that is so important because it's not always clear to folks that, of course, these things are going to happen.
Yep.
The other thing is it because it's already there, it is not then incumbent on one person to reach out to someone like me. We call someone like that the family champion. There are not that many people who do what I do. There are a few of us out there, but we would tend to call that person the family champion. When that person reaches out to me, one of the initial challenges is to not appear to be aligned with that person
Right.
because it's like, well, wait a minute. My sister talked to Jane and Jane must be on her side. Well,
Right.
no, I'm very careful when we are just having an initial exploration.
Hmm.
Very careful. Don't tell me all the details. Tell me enough that we can all have a one-on-one brief conversation, see if we want to move forward together. If we do, then I want you to tell me everything you think I should know in a one-on-one conversation
Right.
before we get together.
Right. Okay. Okay. How interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, going back just one step for a second. So, having it in the governance of the organization, I think also has the advantage that people expect it to happen, and therefore there's less resistance when it does. And then the family champion triggers this and gives you a call, whatever, and there you are. And suddenly, it kind of gets rid of the first barrier of, well, who's Jane? What does she know about our
Right,
business? Why is she here? Right.
right, right.
So automatically you're in a place that there is no surprise to anybody.
Yes. Hmm.
So typically, what are the most common challenges that you have faced? I mean, in a commercial or business environment, what do you find is the most common reason for your support being required?
So, as surprising as it may sound to some, but probably not too many of the folks who are listening to us, there's no plan at all. There's just not a plan. And it has been similarly to the challenge of dealing with conflict. It's, I don't know what to do. So I will do nothing because I'm the founder. I'm only 75 years old and I'm in perfect health. Well, I think if nothing else, that's always been a challenging thing to look at, but COVID has hammered that home. Unexpected things happen. And you do yourself a favor, you do your family a favor, and you do your business a favor if you don't just hope that everything will work out. That's truly the biggest challenge is that there is nothing, just nothing in place. Or there is something in one person's mind which has not been shared with anyone else. Because of course, everyone must be agreeing with me. I've been so successful with our business. How could anyone disagree with my thoughts, unexpressed, about how we'll go forward?
Jane, I mean, almost every expert I've spoken to has essentially said a version of what you have just said. You know, because very often founders are uncomfortable about facing the possibility that they're actually not immortal.
Yeah,
Uh, you know,
yes.
they don't want to face that because it's kind of difficult, and scary and all of those things. And so they do nothing, which in itself, as we both know, is a decision. They take the decision to do.
Yes. Yes. And I don't think they always recognize that. That's so important.
Mm,
I think that's an important point you're making, Ashim. It's
mm,
that you are making a decision if you choose to do nothing.
right,
Not a
right.
good one, but you're making a decision.
Exactly. And it's not a good one, but it's
Yeah.
easier to kick the can down the road, so to speak, and hope that one day that, it will never happen. That day will never come, but fortunately or otherwise, it always does. So
Yes.
yeah. So start early, guys. You
Yes.
hear you hear it from Jane. So, um, I mean, I know you've already said that you invited along at different stages of the conflict. Sometimes you're invited along early, but that's quite rare, I think. So what do you see where in the later stages of the conflict? What are the possible outcomes? What are the dangers? What does this environment look like between the people involved?
Well, by the time I'm involved, typically things are not good at all. There, there are different ways that it may roll out. Sometimes it's very obvious and it's very bad right now. Other times it's harder to see. It's just
Mm,
opportunities are being missed. There are people drifting away who could be involved. There are key employees who are starting to look around a little bit because boy, this outfit's not thriving. And why would I tie myself to this situation? Sometimes it's very clear. People who literally are running the business and not speaking to each other
mm,
and think that's okay. And the staff is saying, both family members and non-family members are saying, this is not okay. Of course, you can't run a business like this. That kind of thing can happen. Sometimes there's going to be a serious financial hit, and it's going to be something that may destroy the business or set it back a great deal. Ideally, they don't get themselves in a situation where there are lawsuits, which is pretty much going to hurt everyone but the lawyers. Rarely is there a true winner in that kind of a lawsuit.
mm,
But people sometimes think, oh, it's too late. And I will share with you that there are times people say to me, oh, Jane, too late. These people are really angry.
mm,
And my reply to that is there are times when any of us, if we feel we're doing just fine in this not very nice situation, it's a bad conflict, but I think I'm winning in whatever fashion, I need to feel some pain before I'm going to do anything about it.
right.
So maybe it's too soon. It's not too late, it's too soon. And
Mm,
that pain can be different things. It can be money. It can be, I really don't like being estranged from my brother or my father. It can be, my spouse says to me, deal with this. You're bringing this home every night. I'm sick of it. Sometimes it's genuinely a health issue.
right.
It's not good for us to be under stress all the time, to sleep too little and drink too much. It can be something that is a tipping point, unfortunately more than a turning point, but it can lead to a turning point. But it's okay, I can't do this anymore. Can't do this
Right. Right. Well, I mean, some of those sound pretty scary, don't they? And the impact really quite deep. So you mention other employees, yeah, non-family members who start to feel insecure and uncomfortable, and of course that's going to have an impact on the value of the business. Very important if you're deciding to sell the business when you step down as an owner. But also, as you so rightly say, Jane, you bring these stresses home with you, and that affects your relationship with your spouse, and gosh knows where that could lead if it's allowed to continue. And thirdly, and perhaps even more importantly, maybe I don't know, is the impact that it has on your health as well. So you're good for nothing if you're lying in a hospital bed.
Absolutely true.
You
Absolutely
know.
true. It's difficult to face. I understand that, but I
Mm,
think it's not impossible. And I will I will share with you one thing that I
mm,
find interesting and happens far too frequently is that people, when they get in touch with me, doesn't surprise me anymore, but it still saddens me, come with a feeling of shame,
mm,
feeling of guilt, a feeling of We shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't have these problems within our family business. Dad would be horrified, or mom is horrified. Mom is smack in the middle of this because everyone goes to mom to complain,
Mm,
but they feel bad and they come to me with this, oh my God, my reaction, I give you a lot of applause and credit because you're not alone by any means, as certainly advisors understand, but the families themselves are reluctant to talk to each other. They're not likely to
mm,
share. Oh my God, I'm pulling my hair out over here. So they don't know that the others are going through this as well. When they try to take action, from my perspective, good for you. You're doing the right thing. Please
mm.
don't beat up on yourself. Congratulate yourself for taking steps to deal with this challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it is a brave thing to do, and very often, unfortunately, people perceive it in the opposite way, that it's a sign of weakness. We can't handle it ourselves. Keep it
Mm.
in the family and all of that.
Well,
Um,
I think we've all heard people say, "Well, I don't perform my own
right.
dentistry.
Mm,
Don't perform my own dentistry on myself. I
right.
go to an expert to help with that." And I think by the same token, there are people who go to an expert for IT. There are people who go to an
Mm,
expert for what do we do about our sales process?
right.
There are people who go for do something about our machinery.
Hmm,
Something
hmm.
is not as good as it could be. You can go to people that will help you do better with your business.
Yeah. Very, very important message, Shane. Don't wait too long, before things become almost irreversible. Um, and don't feel embarrassed about it. Go to an expert and get it sorted, as you say, Jane. Is it so kind of thinking about the whole panoply of experiences that you have had, has there been anything that's really surprised you, something that's really stood out in your mind, something you didn't expect when you started on your journey in this field?
I didn't expect the shame. I
Mm,
really didn't think that was going to be the case, that people would be embarrassed by being challenged by this.
mm,
I don't know why, but for some reason that just didn't occur to me that that would be a big piece of this. Um, and it continues on. It continues on and on. And it
mm,
seems to be across the board. It doesn't seem to matter how large the family, type of business, where they're located, but there is often this, oh dear, which makes it even harder to face the
mm,
real problem, to have
mm.
that overlay of, oh, are we bad people? Because
Right.
that also takes us down the path of, I don't want to believe the whole family is bad. Maybe we have one bad apple, and that will be our scapegoat for everything. Even when that person is gone, they can still be our scapegoat, which is
Mm,
not helpful either.
mm. Yeah. Gosh. So it sounds to me as though you're such a you need to be such a combination of, I don't know, therapist, coach. I mean, it's just so many things. Nurse in some ways. I mean, so many skills. Great bedside manner, huge amount of patience.
It is a collection. And I have to be
Mm,
very careful, and I am very careful that
mm,
when I'm doing this, I'm not practicing law. I don't give
right.
legal advice. I am not qualified to work as a therapist. Occasionally, a family member will say, my family needs therapy.
Mm,
Now, if they're with me, there's been some self selection because generally the rest of the family says, not a chance.
right.
I will do therapy with my spouse, with my teenager. I
Mm,
am not doing that with my 80 something parents.
right.
But
Right.
there are those who do that, but that's not my world. And I try to be careful about that.
Hmm, hmm. Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, I find as a coach myself, I find that we are often either called upon or are drawn into um, being something outside what we would normally do, simply because of the context, and we
Mhm.
need to watch out that that doesn't happen.
Yes,
It's
yes,
important.
exactly.
So, do you find that there are cultural things which, if you like, color or shade conflicts in different parts of the world, or in different cultures or different groups?
It's such an interesting idea.
Mm,
definitely yes, on the one hand.
Mhm.
And we need to be very sensitive and respectful of that. That what makes sense to me because of my life experience may not have anything to do with what makes sense to someone else.
Mhm.
But what's so interesting to me is the world is always dynamic, but even more so in recent years, and even without thinking about the impact of COVID over the last year. But because we are in contact with other people from very different backgrounds, living in completely different places, that changes our perspectives.
Mm.
And now it's not uncommon for successful family enterprises to send the kids, perhaps from Asia to North America or to the UK for an education. And what do you know? When they come back, they bring back the perspective they learned there.
Right.
And maybe mom and dad aren't really ready for that. That was not what I had in mind, that you would go and come back thinking in a more Western way. But, or you may even bring back a potential life partner.
Mm.
It's fascinating how we continue to change. And as families grow and have contact with all sorts of people and commerce too, uh,
Mhm.
we see other things. And I hope on the one hand, it raises our sensitivity and then also allows us to sometimes think, well, this is what I know, but perhaps we could benefit by taking a little bit from a culture unlike ours
Absolutely.
and
Mhm.
gaining from that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, life is a learning journey, and learning from others and other cultures is part of that journey, and a hugely, hugely powerful and important part of that journey. It's wonderful. But it's interesting you should say that, Jane. That we are, moving closer in some ways. I guess that's what the outcome is. Yes,
I
we're moving
think
closer in terms of how we conduct conflict, what triggers conflict, how we respond to it, and so on, which is
it,
perhaps a good thing.
and fascinating. I don't know that everyone would have expected
Mm,
when COVID hit that even mediation virtually can
mm,
be very successful and sometimes even better than sitting around a table because people are in their own personal comfort zones.
right,
Easier
right.
sometimes to discuss these really tough topics when I'm in a place where I feel good, confident. It's a
Hmm.
different thing. And of
Yeah,
course, the
yeah.
coaching, absolutely. I think it's unusual for that to be in person because it's
Mm,
just not time effective for
mm,
people to
mm,
travel. So, of course, phone and video work very well indeed.
right. Yeah, I'm finding the same thing. It's great doing what we do because we don't, we can do it across the world, can't we?
Absolutely. Anywhere,
Without,
anywhere is possible.
yeah,
It
yeah.
really, the opportunities are vast.
Oh, it's wonderful. I like it. I like it very much. So, unfortunately, I mean, I could talk to you for days, Jane, for days. I honestly, I remember our last conversation. It took ages, and we still hadn't finished. So, but unfortunately, the clock is against us. And so before we wind up, what would you say were the top three, or top two, or top five? It's up to you. Pieces of advice that you would give to a family business that is either going through or is planning their succession process based on your experience.
I think it will echo what some of your other folks have said with you. First of all, start now.
Hmm.
Start now, regardless of how far along the business is. I spoke to someone very early when I founded my own business. I was absolutely brand new. And this person said to me, "What's your exit strategy?" And I said, "I am barely on the on ramp." What? And his response was, "You have to figure out what you're building." And similarly with a family business, are you building something for the next generation? Yes, no, I'm not putting a judgment on that, but know what you're doing and get planning. It's never too soon. And at the same time, things evolve, families evolve, conditions evolve. You need to check in with that and you need to write it down. Having it carried around in your head is only one step removed from relying on founder immortality. They're both bad. Actually, write this thing down. As you're having conversations, and you must have conversations. You can't do it all in your own head and impose it on people. Talk, but listen. Listen
Mm,
widely. Listen to the people who you think are unlikely, and maybe they are. Maybe they have an insight you didn't think of. The very least, as we were talking about a few minutes ago, even if I don't agree with what is going to happen, I can accept it and move effectively forward with it if I feel like my opinion was at least heard with respect. Wonderful thing. Third, and again, they all really relate to each other a bit, avoid thinking in black and white.
right.
Ultimatums, lines in the sand, all or nothing, sort of, it has to be this. Maybe there's a transition period. Maybe you do want to keep it within the business, within the family, excuse me, the business within the family, but there just isn't anyone at the right age, the right capacity right now. Okay, maybe you can work on that instead of throwing your hands up and say, it's hopeless. Maybe there are ways to work creatively to accomplish what is best for the family and the business.
Mm. Yes, the solutions are always or often found in the gray. Yes, and when we need to be prepared to go there,
Yeah.
and keep an open mind.
The gray can be a very fertile spot, I
Right,
think. There are many
right.
opportunities there.
Well, well, wise words indeed, Jane. Wise words indeed. I mean, certainly I'll be thinking about that later on tonight. you know. So, so tell me. I understand that you have a free gift to share with our audience.
Of course,
Perhaps you could share some information on that,
I'd
please.
be happy to. First, everyone is, of course, welcome to listen to my weekly podcast. It's called Crafting Solutions to Conflict. I started in January 2019. I have very short episodes that are just a topic to think about, 5 minutes or so. And then I have guests for 30 minutes or so who have insights. Some of them are family enterprise leaders, that very familiar names. Others are people in the conflict resolution world who offer something more specifically about conflict. Family enterprise folks, their perspective on conflict. You can find it on any of the apps and enjoy. The other thing that I am happy to offer is a complimentary and confidential consultation with anyone. And I understand how terribly important the privacy is. That's what I've been doing for a very long time. I'm extremely comfortable with that. No worries. So please feel free to reach out to me by phone, by email, by LinkedIn, my website, whatever works for you. I would be happy to connect with people.
That's very generous, Jane. Tell me, how would people get your contact details, your email details, and so on? Do you have a website address you could share with us?
I do. My company website is www.dovetailresolutions.com. That is my,
Dovetailresolutions.com. That's all one word, yes?
yes, that's all one
Okay.
word. And I also, for better and for worse, have a very unusual name. If you can spell my first name, Jane, and my last name, Beddall, I think there's like maybe one other out there, and she is clearly not me. But you, there may be more than one, but you won't stumble on more than two or three of us, and they're just not the same person.
Well, you're clearly unique, Jane, so I don't think there's any doubt about that. So thank you again, Jane, for taking the time. Really, really happy that we managed to do this. And just say to the audience, to remind the audience, your podcast is called Crafting Solutions to Conflict. So I'll be tuning into that.
Thank
So
you.
thank you again.
And thank
And
you. Great pleasure to talk with you.
and to you, Jane. Bye for now.